Bug in or bug out? That seems to be the age-old question in discussions about prepping for SHTF or the end of the world as we know it, or without rule of law, or any of the other acronyms that basically mean there's a really big problem and help probably isn't coming. I see this topic come up a lot on the internet and with people that I talk to. If society is breaking down or some disaster is about to strike or already has struck, should you bug in where you already live, or should you bug out to a remote location further away from population centers or anything else that might be considered a threat to your well-being? Now, there's no easy answer to that question, but I'll try to sort of boil it down how I think about it. Whenever possible, if the circumstances allow for it, bugging in my opinion, is 100% the smarter way to go. But like I said, there's a lot of caveats to that and circumstances that might not make that possible or might make that more questionable. So the first thing that you have to consider before you can really answer the question bug in or bug out is what is the event that you're facing that's causing you to have to make that decision? And accordingly, is bugging in physically possible? If we're talking about massive wildfires that are threatening your home, obviously bugging in isn't as viable. Same thing with a hurricane or a tornado that's headed your way. Any natural disaster that threatens the actual location that you would bug into pretty much answers that question. You can't stay there. So because of that, you have to have a plan for what you're going to do if you can't. That's where bug out bags come in, and plans for how you're going to pack up your vehicles, where you're going to go, who's going to help you, who might you need to help. So natural disasters, but also let's say there's a disruption in the supply lines, disruption in basic services, and it's been going on long enough that rule of law is starting to unravel. I think that's the scenario that a lot of people think about when they think about prepping. If you live in the middle of a very dense city, or if you live in an apartment building, you might not be in the best circumstance or situation to stay where you're at. So, as I said a couple minutes ago, if the circumstances are such that it's physically possible or prudent for you to do so, you should probably bug in. But if you live in a place where that's just not possible, an apartment, you can't really store a lot in an apartment. You might be able to store the basics to get through a power outage that lasts maybe a week. But you're not going to be able to stay put there for, a month or 3 months, particularly when you're packed in with so many other people who are going to be competing for resources, possibly becoming desperate, looking to take what others have. So in those cases, you'd be crazy not to have a plan for bugging out. For a lot of people who live in either the suburbs or maybe on the outskirts of a town, or of course in a rural area, bugging in makes so much more sense. You've got all your stuff right there with you. You have the convenience and the means and the opportunity to store and stock food, supplies, water, defenses. Not only that, but you're effectively living your preps on a daily basis. You're living in the house that's outfitted with generator power or solar power or garden or defenses. You know that that home, and you know that land more than you know anything else, and you know it more than anyone else does. You're familiar with your town, streets, roads, ways to get in and out, what resources your town may or may not have. You're probably familiar with your neighbors to some degree. Maybe you know who you might be able to count on for help. Maybe you know who is most likely to cause you trouble. Those are huge advantages. The moment that you bug out, you're throwing most of that away. You're packing up what you can take with you, probably in your car. That's some of your food, some of your water, some of your weapons, some of your supplies. But you, your family, your pets, you all have to go. And you can't bring enough to last all of you for very long. Unless you're going to a retreat or a location that's already pretty well stocked or outfitted with what you might need, you're increasing your risk and difficulty by leaps and bounds. You're heading into the unknown. And even if you do have a retreat that you visit once in a while, a hunting cabin or a vacation home way up north or way out on the outskirts of town, you don't necessarily know what state it'll be in when you get there. Hopefully it's just the way you left it, but it's all too common that opportunists and criminals burglarize or squat in vacation homes because they're empty for so much time out of the year. So pretty much everything that you're heading into is an unknown. Even if it's a place that you've traveled to plenty of times, you don't know what the atmosphere is going to be like at that exact time. You don't know what state your retreat or your supplies might be in. If you have such a place, then that's awesome, and I don't mean to discourage utilizing it at all. It's just things you need to think about, things you need to be conscious of that you might be walking into if the time comes where you have to bug out to that location. You're going to be traveling with spouse, children, pets, any other family members that might live with you or near you. That's a lot of people to move and to organize and to supply. Now, the one sort of ridiculous theme that I see pop up in prepping discussions is this notion that when SHTF, you're going to bug out to the woods. And I think anyone who thinks about it for any amount of time can see why that is just absolutely unrealistic. It's as ridiculous as it is reckless. If you and 100,000 other people say, I'm going to head out to these particular woods that I've spent time in my day hunting or camping in, well, not only are you heading into the wilderness expecting to live off of that land to some degree, but you're going to have a lot of competition to do that as well. How many of you will it take before the deer and the rabbits and the squirrels in that area are completely hunted out? Are you going to be competing for the same fresh water source? It's not realistic unless you own property that is wooded or wilderness, and you pretty much live there. It's just not realistic. You're going to be competing for resources with other people. Even if you do own wooded land, you might find people trying to set up shop in them, thinking that they're going to live off your land. It's pretty absurd to think that the average, suburbanite or city dweller is gonna show up to the middle of the woods in their SUV, unpack their kids and their dog, and think that it's gonna be Swiss Family Robinson. you're going to go hungry, you're going to be cold, you're going to be dehydrated very quickly, unless you're a serious woodsman and survivalist and your entire family also is. It's going to be every minute of your day will be a struggle in one way or the other. When I go camping in the woods, I bring whatever I need for the amount of time I'm going to be there. And as soon as I start to run out of stuff, I think, it's probably time to get back to my house in the suburbs. If you head out there, that's no longer an option, because there isn't going to a store or just heading back home. As soon as you abandon your home, you're leaving it open to anything, everything. If you stayed there, you'd have the presence and the means to defend it, or just by your being there, it would be a deterrent for someone else to want to move in and see what resources that you might have left behind. So, to sort of recap, if you're able to, if your home is safe from the disaster that's impending, be it weather or otherwise, if you're in a location that you can realistically prep with supplies, defenses, water, food, that sort of thing, and especially if you don't have an amazing bug out retreat in the mountains that you somehow inexplicably constructed without anybody knowing about it. Maybe you're a millionaire. If you're a millionaire prepper, well, you probably don't need to listen to the likes of me. You're already going to be pretty well outfitted just by throwing money at the problem. But I guess to the millionaire preppers out there, make sure to do that now, because as soon as the time comes, those millions of dollars aren't going to mean anything to hungry, desperate people. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my opinion on the matter. If at all possible, I intend to bug in. If the situation escalates, or the amount of time that things have been broken down elapses long enough, then you have to ask the question, is it going to be moot anyway? If we're living in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, how much is it going to matter if I'm here or 2 hours north of here? It's going to be a nightmare either way. So at that point, you pretty much are screwed unless you have an amazing wilderness retreat already stocked and set to go. So that's my take on it. Let me know what you think. Bug in or bug out? What are you going to do? Till next time, this is Great Lakes Prepping.